Hi everyone, welcome. What you see here is the meal plan for today's feeding of our European nightcrawlers that live in these yellow buckets over here. I've got 3 of them. This is what I refer to as bucket number 3. Next to it is bucket number 4, and bucket number 5 is off screen. Also awaiting a nice portion of coffee. And you know, those top covering newspapers that we left for these little guys, I wondered if those in the end might just be better off being used as bedding, because I've got replacements. Why not just drop in a nice new replacement top covering, especially if you've got a piece of paper that's been resting beneath a piece of plastic covering your worm bin where the moisture's been recirculating. Perhaps this piece of paper could have gone one more round as top covering, but hey, let's just use it as bedding and swap it out. So I did sort of expect that newspaper going out beyond the edges of the plastic covering would provide a little additional moisture retention capability by perhaps stifling a little bit of moisture evaporation that would otherwise occur if the material were pretty much just exposed to the air around the edges of the plastic. And I must say, the material in these systems, I don't know if it's just because we're dealing with night crawlers here and they're just by their nature a somewhat larger size worm, and maybe because of that their castings are a little bit bigger than what I'm, sometimes encountering in other worm bins where there's smaller size worms like red wigglers or Indian blue worms and stuff like that. But I don't know, I definitely like the way the material in here is coming along. I think we, newspaper. We jammed the newspaper down underneath the feeding last time as sort of part of the foundational bedding that went in alongside their feeding. And it was, it was like an entire piece of newspaper. And, there we go. Kind of what I was expecting. I thought we would just encounter some leftovers of that stuff that was the supplementary bedding that accompanied the last feeding. Since it's still kind of holding together perhaps a little bit better than I expected, I thought that it might be in smaller fragments by now or broken down a little bit better than that, but I figured perhaps we'll help it along. So now I did do a little quick check on these corn cobs that we fed at some point quite a while ago at this point. Before we get overly soiled here, these are the systems where we put corn cobs in, which soaked for 66 days. And well, no, so the corn cobs have been in here in the worm bins. All 3 buckets received these soaked corn cobs. As far as how long the corn cobs soaked, they were just sitting in water in a jar for perhaps a couple weeks. And the idea of that was that perhaps the soaking would soften the material some. I think there were 3 chunks of corn cob placed into each system. So now we've bumped into 2 of the 3. I mean, 66 days, it's 3 months, right? 3 months for these corn cobs, and they're getting along a little bit. I could feel some softness. But it just seems to me like if I start crumbling our little test subjects away each time I bump into them, then they're never going to reveal to us how long they took to break down on their own accord without my help. So sort of like this weird little hands-off policy with certain materials that I'm trying to evaluate things on, if that makes sense. So I just found that 3rd little piece of corn cob. I guess one definite observation on all 3 of those is that they definitely seem to be much, much smaller than they were when they first started out. I mean, if you can imagine any one of these 3 being, could it be the half of a corn cob? Just a corn cob split in half? These might have all started out, or maybe they're actually the half of a half, so a quarter of a corn cob. So, all right, well, I give this bucket Very high marks for beautiful, beautiful castings. The material all feels nice and moist and very cozy for worms to be in. And the worms look good. So I think we're gonna just proceed now with some of the stuff I've got here. Kind of like last week where I just grabbed a piece of newspaper. Here I'm just grabbing a napkin. And it's gonna go in as, yep, you guessed it, foundational bedding. But let's not forget, we're being extra generous today with foundational bedding, right? Because we have also this nice seasoned piece of paper here to include as part of our feeding. And guess what? These little guys are also getting a bonus today. Something that the buckets rarely get, which is a feeding zone indicator. It's just a funny little tradition here in my wormery. And you know, I don't have my grit here on the ready, which is fine. I've probably added grit many times, but this fine material I'm dumping in now is just some peanut shells. Nothing too glamorous about it. Peanut shells that I've been trying to see if I can increase the speed at which they break down. Because if you've ever tried putting peanut shells into a compost barrel or compost bin or a worm bin anywhere, peanut shells just basically go nowhere. And now, besides a nice replacement top covering newspaper, they're also getting yet another layer of protection to keep the moisture down within the system, a feeding zone indicator. And well, yeah, most of that's probably just going to end up becoming, oops, what was that? It's probably just going to end up becoming supplementary bedding to include in a future feeding. So I think it's time to shove these little guys over, and let's carefully get bucket. Let's see, what was it? 3? This is 4. Bucket number 4 queued up for, oh my goodness, gotta make some space here for getting its feeding. Alright, so this is where, when I start getting into the somewhat repetitiveness of doing multiple systems, where I kind of know what to expect now that we've gone through bucket number 3. Here in bucket number 4, I'm, I guess, hopefully thinking correctly by expecting more or less more of the same. So I'm expecting nice castings, I'm expecting healthy worms. We're going to bump into some 66-day-old corncob bits, which I'm going to have a tendency to not want to interfere with in terms of helping them break down. This is even the stem of a banana, or a couple bananas, or maybe it's just one stem starting to fall apart. Oh, there's another piece of corncob. And I definitely saw some newspaper bits, some of the bedding that accompanied the last feeding. Here it seems like the newspaper bits have broken down a little bit more than what we saw in bucket number 3. And lots and lots of nice castings starting to pile up here. So let's see, let's just move these corncob bits aside, because we didn't really get a chance over here to till up this side of the container. I'm just sort of taking the opportunity here while the material is still relatively shallow, before we start getting really close to reaching capacity in these systems. Not that we're going to get very close to reaching capacity, but as the system gradually gets more and more material loaded into it and its level starts to increase, just getting to the bottom, doing a good thorough tilling becomes more and more difficult. So now, while these systems are still relatively young, they're 104 days old, so yeah, we missed the 100 day mark here. Sorry guys, happy 100 days in service, belated. And what else? I had all that information out on the green board that I flashed a moment ago, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at it. But if you noticed, these systems have been fed 8 times so far, so what they're getting here today is feeding number 9. And just at this point where I start to feel like I want to be consistent. See if I can remember how I dished out each meal plan to each system as I go. And I don't know, I mean, you might have noticed me sort of chipping away, not chipping, but trying to see what chipping would be like if I wanted to chip away. And it does feel like if I wanted to, I mean, if I wanted to start chipping away a little bit there on that corn cob, I probably could have done so pretty easily just with the tip of my finger there. But I opted not to do so. Figured just leave it be. Let it sort of stay somewhat intact if possible. Because there again, I have nothing off the top of my head with which to compare in terms of how long it would normally take for a corn cob to break down if it had not been soaked. So even if I came up with some sort of a time period of how long it took here, I wouldn't really have the comparison point of view to go with there. So, all right, 3, 4, and now bucket 5. All right, well, it did seem like following the cookie cutter approach in bucket number 4 worked well, so hopefully here too in bucket 5 we can expect and find more of the same as what we've seen in the other 2 systems. Wow, yeah. Nice healthy looking populations in all 3 of these buckets. Worms definitely seem pretty content with this abundance of bedding material we included. I believe besides just a big crumpled up newspaper laying down at the bottom of the feeding zone, I think there was also some of my shredded prepared bedding material too. But I think today with the supplementing of the bedding with the reused old top covering becoming bedding now, plus that nice big generous napkin, that luxurious napkin that goes in first, I think we should be okay from a bedding point of view. And I guess I'm sort of thinking there might be a 4th little chunk of corn cob somewhere. I think I bumped into 1, 2, 3 over here. So chances are there is a 4th one somewhere. Here's another banana stem. Not too surprising, and it's incredible how they just go to shreds, right? So the question is, do we? Yeah, okay. I was about to question whether or not we spend any more time looking for that 4th piece of corn cob, but it did suddenly appear. So I think we're pretty much where we want to be in terms of checking everything out, confirming that we're finding results consistent with the other brother bins or sister bins or whatever you want to consider them as, and most importantly, not finding anything of concern. Just a whole bunch of nice, happy worms, seemingly content to be munching away on my kitchen scraps for me. And I'm definitely liking the way that top covering little piece of newspaper that was added to the plastic top covering did appear to almost help the system's moisture level boost a little bit in a way. Not sure if I'm imagining it, but the material in these systems definitely feels really nice and damp and cozy. You know, just trying to imagine what a worm would consider cozy and comfortable in. And I think what I'm feeling in these buckets here is pretty much right on the money as far as what the worms would probably ask for if they had a choice on how their accommodations should be set up for optimal comfort. And I'm glad that that's the way it's working here. So that was fun. I think I managed somehow to remain more or less consistent, checking each system and giving its fair portion of food, bedding, and everything else, and of course tender love and care. Alright everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.